The Dragon Story, Chapter 8, Finally. In September, Bub started a new adventure, middle school. It wasn't so bad after all, Bub decided. Sixth grade had started out a little scary. New hallways, new teachers, new everything, but he'd settled in nicely. His summer had been great, filled with fishing at the pond, though no dragons, a magical trip to Disney World, though the fake dragons there couldn't compare to real ones, and endless games of soccer and foursquare with his friends and family. Still, he couldn't help wondering about Smokey and his family. Sometimes at night, he'd lie awake listening for familiar screeches in the distance and wind rustling past his window. He'd taken to walking up to the woods where he'd first found Smokey and checking behind the boulders, where they'd reunited at Christmas, but sadly, no dragons. When Thanksgiving arrived, the house filled with family, his aunties, cousins, and of course, G-Dad. Aunt Sienna's sweet butter and brown sugar squash filled the kitchen with mouth-watering aromas, while Aunt Chloe's famous fresh-baked rolls competed for attention with not one but two massive turkeys, and G-Dad's stuffing and mashed potatoes. Before dinner, Bub insisted they take a walk to check the woods one more time. His cousins didn't understand why. The dragon adventures remained a family secret to protect their magical friends, but no scaly visitors had appeared. 2 days later, on his birthday morning, Bub was bursting with excitement. He loved presents almost more than anything else, except his family, dragons, and of course his dog. He wanted to race down to see what he got, but his mom insisted he wait upstairs until she was done with the last wrapping. Aunt Sienna and Aunt Chloe had arrived to see him too, so waited with him in his bedroom talking about what he might get. G-Dad was downstairs making his famous squishy eggs, a beloved family tradition of buttery toast, all smooshed together with over-easy eggs in a bowl. The delicious smell wafted up the stairs while Annie played with Wagner and Mom decorated the big room with balloons. That's when something magical happened. There was a big noise. Swoosh! Something huge had shot past Bub's bedroom window. The curtains were wide open to the brilliant blue November sky, and before he could process what he'd seen, swoosh! And then yet another swoosh! More shapes zoomed by, sending leaves swirling in their wake. A massive black form, then one shimmering purple-blue animal, followed by others, orange, yellow, and green. Whatever it was circling the house at an incredible speed. Bub pressed his face against the window, his heart almost stopping when he saw them. All of them. The father dragon looking strong and healthy, the mother dragon, her scales gleaming in the sunlight, and all the other dragons who had helped save the day last November. And there, was that really, yes, Smokey, but he wasn't small anymore. He'd grown to the size of a young elephant. "I can't believe it," Bub gasped, his eyes wide open. "I can't believe it." He bolted from his bedroom, ignoring G-Dad's calls from the kitchen about waiting, racing past his mom and her carefully arranged presents, straight to the back deck. The aunties followed close behind as he burst through the glass door into the cold morning air. The dragons were everywhere, swooping and diving and swooping around the house, their wings creating huge gusts strong enough to make the trees dance, their shadows dancing across the grass like a magical ballet. "Smokey!" Bub called out, shielding his eyes from the sun. With graceful precision, Smokey landed on the deck right in front of him. The young dragon's golden eyes sparkled with mischief as he dropped to his knees, nodding his head in a clear invitation. "Want to go for a ride?" What followed was pure magic. Smokey dropped down onto his knees and gestured at Bub, clearly inviting him to climb on. Bub's heart was racing with excitement, but he turned to his mom first. "Can I go?" he asked, trying to keep the desperate hope out of his voice. "Please." His mom looked worried, glancing between her son and the dragon who was now so much bigger than the baby they'd found by the pond. "I just don't know," she said. As if understanding her concern, Smokey turned to William's mom, making a soft purring sound deep in his throat as if to say, "He will be okay." And with that, Bub said quietly, "He's my friend." Mom took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, but be careful." Immediately, Bub climbed onto Smokey's back, and Smokey leaped into the air with the powerful beats of his wings, shooting straight up into the sky. Then Smokey's mom landed on the deck right in front of William's mom. "Oh no! There is no way!" she shouted. But Wagner had already helped her climb onto Smokey's mom's back, and with a playful screech the mother dragon launched into the air too, with William's mom protesting but also laughing as they soared into the air. One by one, the other dragons swooped down to collect their riders. Aunt Chloe on the orange dragon, Aunt Sienna on the yellow one, and Wagner holding tight to little Annie as the massive father dragon carried them skyward. G-Dad was the last to take off, looking like he'd been riding dragons his whole life as the purple-blue dragon joined the aerial flight. They formed a spectacular rainbow of dragons circling high above the house. Bub could see everything: their house, the woods where he first found Smokey, and then the whole neighborhood. Their shadows danced across the ground below, making patterns like a ballet. Smokey led them in a sweeping dive toward the pond, flying so low that his wingtips sent up sparkling trails of water into the air. The other dragons followed, creating a series of ripples that looked like an elaborate design on the water. Annie laughed when Smokey's dad did a gentle roll. They soared higher again, banking toward the larger lake beyond the woods. The dragons flew in perfect synchronization, weaving around each other like they were performing an aerial dance. Bub's heart soared as Smokey demonstrated just how much he'd grown, doing perfect barrel rolls and loops that would have made any stunt pilot jealous. The cold air whipped past them, but Smokey's scales were warm, and Bub felt safer than he ever had before. Mom had stopped screaming and was now laughing when Smokey's mom showed off her own aerial skills. The aunties were taking selfies mid-flight, which no one would ever believe were real, and G-Dad was just soaking it all in. After what felt like both forever and not nearly long enough, the dragons landed back down in the backyard. They landed one by one, each dragon kneeling before their riders in what could only be described as a bow. It seemed like more than just politeness. Perhaps it was their way of showing gratitude for that day on the mountain when the family had helped save their king. Smokey, now so much bigger than when Bub had first found him by the pond, came forward one last time. He pressed his snout against Bub's chest, nuzzling him just like he used to when he was small enough to hide behind rocks. Bub wrapped his arms around the dragon's neck, feeling the warmth of his scales and the steady, powerful beat of his heart. In that moment, he could sense that Smokey was trying to say both thank you and until next time. Then the father dragon caught everyone's eye with a knowing wink, and in perfect unison the dragons launched themselves toward the sky, with their wings catching the morning sun as they spiraled higher and higher, their scales shimmering against the brilliant blue sky until they disappeared into the distance, leaving behind only the memory of what just happened. Later, as Bub sat eating G-Dad's famous squishy eggs and opening his presents, new games and clothes that somehow didn't seem quite as exciting anymore, he couldn't stop thinking, this was what he'd really wanted for his birthday, to see Smokey and his mom one more time. That night, as he drifted off to sleep, his mind full of wings and scales and golden eyes, Bub wondered when he might see them again. Christmas? This spring? Next summer? Next Thanksgiving? Or next birthday? He wasn't sure, but he knew one thing. Somewhere up on Mount Washington, in a magical cave that appeared only when needed, a family of dragons was watching over them. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and your heart is open to magic, they might just swoop down to remind you that the world is full of wonder and possibilities. After all, who would have thought that catching a baby dragon by a pond would lead to the greatest adventure any almost 11-year-old could imagine? Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. Sometimes it appears in a flash behind a rock, or in a mysterious screech on a winter night, or in golden eyes peering out from behind a tree. The world is full of wonders waiting to be discovered. Bub had learned that magic isn't just in storybooks or movies. It's right here in our own backyards, in the shadows of mountains, and in the bonds we have with family and friends. You never know when your own adventure might begin. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow you will find footprints that are just a bit too big to be from any normal animal, or hear a sound that doesn't quite match any bird you know, or spot something shimmering in the clouds that doesn't really look like a plane. Because that's the thing about real magic. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It sneaks up on you on any ordinary day, when you're just fishing by a pond or playing in the snow, and suddenly your whole world may change forever. And just remember, somewhere out there, there's a family of dragons soaring through the clouds, maybe looking down on you at any time, reminding you that in this great big world, perhaps truly, anything is possible.